Level 1. The applicant. You're 18. You don't stumble into this. You choose it. You walk into a military recruitment office in Columbus, Ohio. Fluorescent lights. A grey desk. A recruiter who's heard every reason before. You say you want to fly. He doesn't smile. He slides a packet across the table. Medical standards. Vision requirements. Academic benchmarks. Physical thresholds. You read every page that night. 3 weeks later, you're rejected. Vision score. 0.1 points below threshold. You don't go home and quit. You go home and research corrective surgery waivers. You find one case, one pilot in 2003 who got approved after PRK laser surgery. You book the appointment yourself. 6 months later, you reapply. This time, you pass. Nobody gives you a trophy. The recruiter stamps your form and points to the door. You walk out into the parking lot. The sky is overcast. Somewhere above those clouds, someone is flying at Mach 1.5. You think, that will be me. That thought will cost you everything, and it will be worth it. Level 2. The cadet, you're 19. You arrive at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday in July. They call it In-Processing Day. Everyone else calls it the day your old life ends. Your head is shaved before noon. Your civilian clothes are boxed and shipped home. You are given a number before you are given a name. Basic cadet training lasts 6 weeks. You wake at 4:45 a.m. You run in formation before the sun rises over Pikes Peak. You eat in under 4 minutes, eyes forward, spine straight. You memorize the chain of command, the phonetic alphabet, and the general orders before you're allowed to sleep. One cadet in your flight, a kid from Savannah named Garrett, cries the second night. Not loudly, just quietly, facing the wall. By week 3, Garrett is one of the strongest runners in the group. You learn something here that no classroom will ever teach you. The body quits long before it actually has to. Every time you push past the point where your brain says, stop, you're not just training your lungs, you're training your judgment. Pilots don't get second chances at 50,000 feet. So you stop listening to the voice that says enough. And you start listening to the one that says not yet. Level 3, the student pilot. You're 22. You've earned your slot. Undergraduate pilot training at Laughlin Air Force Base, Del Rio, Texas. The heat here is not weather. It's a presence. You begin in the T-6 Texan II, a propeller aircraft, a trainer. After everything you've imagined, everything you've sacrificed, you're flying something that looks like it belongs in 1944. Your instructor, Captain Diaz, is a former A-10 pilot with 11 years of service and zero patience for excuses. First day in the cockpit, he says nothing until you're airborne. Then, you're flying with your eyes. Stop. Fly with your hands. You don't understand it for 3 weeks. Then one morning over the Chihuahuan Desert, something shifts. Your inputs become smaller. Your corrections stop being corrections. You stop reacting and start anticipating. You feel the aircraft, but feeling isn't enough. You study instrument approaches until 1 a.m. You brief before dawn. You fly 2 sorties before lunch. You debrief for 2 hours in the afternoon. The debrief is harder than the flight. Every mistake is replayed. Every hesitation reviewed. There is no ego in that room. Ego gets people killed. You log 90 hours in the T-6. Then they move you to the T-38 Talon, a supersonic jet trainer. Swept wings, 2 engines, a cockpit barely wide enough for your shoulders. The first time you break the sound barrier, you don't hear anything. That's the point. You're already past it. You're not a pilot yet. But for the first time, you feel like you could be. Level 4, the wingman. You're 25. You've been selected. F-22 Raptor training. Tyndall Air Force Base, Florida. Out of your entire UPT class, 4 pilots were chosen for fighters. Only one got the Raptor, you, but nobody celebrates. Your instructor at the F-22 formal training unit makes that clear on day 1. Selection means you have potential. What you do here determines whether you deserve it. The F-22 is not an aircraft you fly. It is an aircraft you manage at the edge of physics. 5th generation stealth, super cruise capability, supersonic flight without afterburner, thrust vectoring nozzles that let you point the nose where the laws of aerodynamics say you can't. Your first flight in the Raptor lasts 1.1 hours. You are exhausted for the rest of the day. The jet gives you more information than your brain was built to process. Radar tracks, threat warnings, fuel states, weapon status, navigation data, all of it simultaneously on a glass cockpit that requires a new kind of vision. Not looking at the displays, but looking through them. Your first simulated air combat, you lose. Badly. Your adversary debrief lasts longer than the fight. You fly again. The next morning. In this pipeline, the opposite of failure isn't success. It's persistence. You watch 2 pilots wash out. Both of them talented, both of them unwilling to hear that they were wrong. You learn to be wrong quickly, loudly, and without shame. That discipline will keep you alive. Level 5, the flight lead. You're 29. You're assigned to the 1st Fighter Wing at Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, one of the most storied units in American aviation history. You're no longer a wingman. You lead a 2-ship formation now. The difference isn't rank, it's responsibility. A wingman executes. A flight lead decides. Your first real tasking comes 6 weeks in. A dissimilar air combat training exercise against Navy F/A 18 Super Hornets over the Atlantic. 4 versus 4. No live weapons. Full simulation rules of engagement. You brief your wingman, Captain Torres, for 90 minutes the night before. Threat axis. Communication discipline. Deconfliction altitude. Abort criteria. You plan for what happens if everything goes right. You plan harder for what happens if it doesn't. The engagement lasts 4 minutes and 11 seconds. You splash 3 Hornets. Torres gets the 4th. In the debrief, the Navy lead, a lieutenant commander with 7 deployments, leans back and says, "Clean execution." You nod. You don't smile. You're already thinking about what you missed. There was a 10-second window mid-engagement where your radar went into a scan mode you didn't call out. Torres compensated without being told. That bothers you more than any mistake. A flight lead who depends on his wingman to cover his silence isn't leading. He's getting lucky. You brief that to Torres directly. He appreciates it. You start to understand. Leadership isn't about performing well. It's about making the people beside you perform better. Level 6. The instructor pilot. You're 33. They send you back to Tyndall, not to learn, to teach. You are now an F-22 instructor pilot, the pilots. Sitting in that cockpit for the first time, pale, tense, over-gripping the stick. Were you 8 years ago? You remember Captain Diaz. You understand him now. Your first student is a 24-year-old from Tucson named Second Lieutenant Harmon. Sharp instincts, fast hands, and a habit of pressing an engagement 20 seconds past the point of tactical logic. He wins fights he should lose. He'll eventually lose one he thinks he's winning. You fly with him every day for 6 weeks. You don't tell him to be less aggressive. Aggression is an asset. You teach him to distinguish between calculated risk and recklessness, because the sky doesn't negotiate, and the margin between the two is measured in fractions of a second. By week 5, Harmon starts calling timeouts on himself mid-engagement. He'll break off a pursuit, reset, and re-engage. He's slower. He's also alive. You write in your evaluation, exceptional threat awareness, sound tactical judgment, recommended for advanced. Designation. It's the best thing you've written in years. You realize something in that debrief room. The mission was never just about flying. It was always about building the next person who flies better than you did. That's not a defeat. That's the whole point. Level 7, the Squadron Commander. You're 38. You command the 94th Fighter Squadron, the Hat in the Ring Squadron, Eddie Rickenbacker's old unit. 26 F-22s, 240 personnel, and a legacy that predates the jet age. You no longer fly every day. You fly when the mission requires it, and when you need to remember what you're actually asking of your pilots. Your desk is full now. Readiness reports. Maintenance delinquency rates. Congressional budget queries forwarded from wing. A formal investigation into a ground incident involving a fuel truck and a hangar door. You sign more documents than you file flight plans. One evening, a young captain named Reyes comes to your office. He's been passed over for a tasking he wanted. Red Flag, Nevada, the premier air combat exercise in the world. He's frustrated. He's not hiding it. You listen. Then you tell him the truth. You weren't passed over because you're not ready. You were passed over because Lieutenant Ewan is less ready, and Red Flag will develop her faster right now. Your time will come. Her window is now. Reyes is quiet for a moment. Then he nods and leaves. 3 months later, Ewan returns from Red Flag with the top adversary kill ratio in her class. Reyes is the first person to congratulate her. That moment costs you nothing. It means everything. You understand now that command isn't authority. Command is tending to the thing you were trusted to protect, the capability, the culture, the people, long enough to hand it to someone better than you. Level 8. The Wing Commander. You're 44. You command the 1st Fighter Wing. 48 aircraft, 4,000 personnel, a base budget measured in 9 figures. You brief the Chief of Staff of the Air Force twice a year. You testify before a Senate subcommittee on tactical air readiness. You manage relationships with allied air forces across 3 continents. The flying hours are fewer now. When you do strap in, your currency is carefully managed. Currency meaning your qualification to legally fly, which must be maintained even when the operational demand is overwhelmingly administrative. Some commanders let it lapse quietly. You don't. You fly once a week, early, before the staff day begins. Not to prove something. To remember what the people under your command live inside every day. There is a pilot in your wing, Captain Donahue, who is grounded pending a medical review. Peripheral vision irregularity, possibly career ending. He's 28. He's been flying since he was 16. You read his file on a Saturday. You call the flight surgeon at home. You ask whether every option has been explored. It hadn't been. 6 weeks later, Donahue is back in the cockpit. Waiver approved. He never knows you made that call. You don't tell him. That's the job. Level 9. The General. You're 51. You wear 2 stars now. Major General. Deputy Commander. Air Combat Command. Langley Eustis, Virginia. You advise on doctrine, force structure, next-generation platform acquisition, and the operational integration of the F-22 and F-35 fleets across 12 active wings. You sit in rooms where the decisions made will determine what America's air superiority looks like in 2045. You think about the kid in Columbus, Ohio, who reapplied after a rejection. You think about him often. There is a debate inside the building about whether the F-22 production line, shuttered since 2011, should be reopened or whether resources should be accelerated entirely towards 6th-generation platforms. Billions of dollars, years of timeline, lives that will one day depend on the answer. You have an opinion. It is not the popular one in the room. You state it clearly. You back it with data. You accept the pushback. You revise what the data tells you to revise, and you hold what the data tells you to hold. A junior analyst approaches you after the meeting. He says, "Sir, I've sat in a lot of those rooms. Most people with your rank don't say the uncomfortable thing." You look at him and say, "That's not rank. That's the only reason rank is worth having." The higher you climb, the fewer people will tell you the truth. So you have to be disciplined enough to keep telling it yourself. Level 10. The legacy, you're 57. You're retiring. Not because you're finished, because it's time to pass it forward. The ceremony is at Langley. Flags, a flyover, a citation read aloud in a voice that makes your career sound larger than it felt from the inside. Your former student Harmon is there. He commands a squadron now. He's teaching his own students to call timeouts on themselves. Captain Reyes made lieutenant colonel. Ewan made full colonel. Donahue is one of the most decorated F-22 pilots in the current force. You didn't fly for all of them, but you made decisions that let all of them fly. Someone asks you afterward what the F-22 taught you. You think for a moment. It taught me that the aircraft doesn't care how talented you are. It cares how prepared you are. And preparation isn't something you do before the hard moment. It's what you do every single day so that when the hard moment comes, and it always comes, you've already decided who you're going to be. You shake hands. You take photographs. You walk to your car. Above the flight line, 2 Raptors climb through broken clouds in a perfect fingertip formation. Clean, quiet, and impossibly fast. You watch until you can't see them anymore. Then you drive home. The mission doesn't end. It transfers.